Hey guys, this is Battlestar Galactica, the board game. My favorite board game to play. And this game is based off the TV show. That was a reboot of a show in the 70s or 60s, I forget. I think 70s, right? Yeah. This show aired on the Sci-Fi Channel from about 2004 to 2008, I believe, or 2007. Pretty decent show. The board game is much better, though. And it's a pretty long game. It's made for about 3 to 6 players. The expansions allow for a 7th player to play. It's 7-player games, and yeah, this game's a pretty long game. By board game standards, like 2 to 3 hours long. Some games I played lasted 40 minutes. Some games I played lasted 4 hours. Depends on the amount of players, whether or not people know how to play, and the tactics involved. So the story, essentially, long story short, the human race is on the run from a group of robots called the Cylons. That's a Centurion, some picture of a Centurion right there. The Cylons are hell-bent on exterminating the human race, and the Battlestar Galactica, this ship here, is the last vestige of a human military. It's charged with protecting the remnants of the human fleet, and you play as a character on the Galactica, trying to survive and trying not to die. So, the start of the game, well, the main goal is the humans have to reach a distance of 8. I'll get into that in a little bit. They have to reach a distance of 8 on the jumps. Basically, you jump throughout the galaxy trying to make it to Kobol, and then you jump one more time and you win the game. All the while, you have to make sure that these 4 resource dials here are not lowered to 0, otherwise the humans lose. Also, this boarding party track, sometimes Cylons may board the Battlestar Galactica, and you have to go to the armory, which I'll show you later on, and shoot them down with lucky dice rolls. And if they progress to the end here, the humans lose. The 6th way that the humans can lose is if the Battlestar Galactica suffers about 5 or 6 damage. These locations are damageable, depending on the situation. All these locations can be damaged, I believe. I think there's maybe one of these can't. The ones that are in the hazard tape here cannot be damaged. Those are special locations. You can't really travel to them, and you really wouldn't want to be there anyway. And anyway, if these are damaged, then the Battlestar Galactica is effectively destroyed, and that's the end of the game for the humans. Now, when you start, you select a character. There are, I believe, 4 different types of characters. This is the vanilla version of the game. There's a lot more characters, but there's 10 initial characters you can play as, and they all have different. They all have a title. I mean, what kind of character they are, whether or not they're engineering or support. Actually, he's a support character. There's political leaders. There are pilots and military leaders, which I will. There we go. Military leaders. About 4 each. The additional expansion adds 1 extra character to each type. Pegasus adds 1 of each to from the show. All these are characters on the show, and all the character traits match their traits on the show too. So when you start, you select a character, and each character has a perpetual ability, which is listed on the top, a once per game ability, which is listed below the perpetual ability, and then there's a dividing line, and at the bottom is their weakness. Each character has 2 strengths, a perpetual, once per game, and then a weakness. And then the setup is where they start off at. Also below the portrait is what cards they draw. These cards are used to pass skill checks that come up throughout the game in crises. So you might have a crisis where there's a water shortage. It requires tactics and leadership. It has a strength of 10, so the cards that you draw have to have up to, the numbers on the cards have to add up to 10 or more in order to be able to pass it. The whole goal is to pass as many crises as you can without going too over, because if you shoot over the amount that you need, you're just wasting cards for other future crises. So it's all about teamwork. You have to really talk to your friends to see how much, and you're not allowed to say how much of a strength you can devote to a crisis. You're going to say a little or a lot. It's very teamwork based, and you have to be able to trust one another. However, depending on how many people are playing the game, one of them is a traitor. So I'll go into these loyalty cards. You are dealt one at the beginning of the game unless you are Baltar. Baltar gets 2. I'll show you. Well, actually, that's Baltar right there. The guy, his handsome mug. You are dealt a loyalty card, and most of them say you are not a Cylon. That means you're a human. That means you want the Battlestar to succeed. You want it to get to a distance of 8 and pass. However, you are Cylon cards. If you are a Cylon, then you have to do everything in your power to stop the Galactica from reaching its goal. And that could be if you're able to lower the 4 resource dials, or somehow manage to get a Centurion on board, or damage the Galactica. How you do this is in the skill checks. You have to try and sabotage by using colors that aren't involved in the skill check, and I'll get into that right now. These are the crisis cards. On the end of your turn, unless you're in the brig, which is the jail, you have to pull one of these cards. Oh, maybe I should get into turns first. Start of the turn, you're able to move in any location here on the Battlestar Galactica. There's a ship up top called the Colonial One. It's basically Air Force One. The president usually hangs out there. You're allowed to move and then action. So you can move to any location. If you're on the Galactica, you can move anywhere for free. You can launch out into space if you're a pilot. Or you can move to Colonial One, which costs you a card. You're allowed to activate any location on here as your action. So you can activate FTL and jump if you're not in the red zone. To explain that, basically you want to jump. If you're humans, you always want to be jumping. This is a jump track here. There's a token that starts on the start point. And crises have little flash symbols, as depicted here. Yeah, my focus is really good. Every time you run a crisis with this flash symbol on it, at the end of the crisis, whether you pass or win or fail, win or whatever, if that has a jump symbol on it, then you move 1 up the jump track. FTL lets you jump early, however you risk losing population, because in the show, whenever you jump early, usually ships get left behind. The whole point, the reason why it takes them so long to jump is because they need to be able to coordinate with the fleet where they're jumping to. They need to have their computers all synchronized and everything. Otherwise, they lose you lose people. Anyway, weapons control. You're allowed to fire on the silent ship with Galactica. It's very rarely used. Typically, you want your pilots to be out there, or the more common action is to go to command and activate up to 2 unmanned Vipers. These are Vipers. Typically you use these to destroy the Cylon ships. And command lets you launch 2 of these, or you can use 2 that are already in space, or use 1 twice. You can either move into each one of these I believe it's 6 areas. These 6 space areas. This counts as a space, that's a space, that, and that, and that. They're all spaces. And you fight off these ships. These are raiders. And heavy raiders. Heavy raiders don't fire, but if they get too close, like here, then they board Galactica. They board the jump track, and they start. Not the jump track, the boarding party track, and they start to infiltrate. And if they get to the end, you lose. So, Anyway, yeah, that's more typically the option rather than using weapons control. Typically, if you're not anybody who's able to fly a Viper, you go to command and launch them. There's communications. Look at back to civilian ships. Civilian ships. They are. I have them in this box. I just got this. These are civilian ships. I'm holding in my hand right now. That's the Dratus radar screen. Picture. You're not allowed to look at the back of civilian ships, but actually you can if you activate that location. But normally you're not able to. And these are ships you want to protect because they have resources on them. And if the Cylons get to them and blow them up, then you lose the resource that's printed on the back. If you can see that. If that ship is destroyed, then you lose a population. You can see that picture there matches the population picture there. And anything that's on the back of that, when it's destroyed, is destroyed, and you lose that resource, and you typically can't get it back. There's some cards that will help you bring it back, but more often than not, yeah, you never really want to lose anything. Resources, by the way, people have various beliefs on their own. People have their own theories about resources. The general consensus is you never want to lose fuel. Fuel is probably the rarest resource. There's some cards that get it back, mainly quorum cards. Distance cards of 1 help you to get fuel back, but you never want to jump ones because the longer you're in space, the longer you're trying to get to Cobalt means the more likely the Cylons will win. You definitely want to be moving as fast as possible. So 3s and 2s are more valuable than jumping 1s. Now again, distance later on. Alright, as for locations, Admiral's Quarters. Action, you can choose a character and throw them in the brig. As you can see, those are the numbers. That's that number and the colors. That's a skill check. Those colors are the tactics and leadership. As you can see on the bottom of the board, you see the colors and what type of skill check they are in engineering. There's 5 colors. Pegasus adds a 6th, which is treachery. But that means that you have to have your cards added up has to be a positive total of 7 for the skill check to pass. These are the cards used in skill checks. So for example, if you're Saltai, you get 2 leadership and 3 tactics. So blah, 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 let's just pretend these are the right cards. So you get, okay, well, let's just pretend this isn't an engineering card. Okay, well this is a repair card. It has a strength of 1. So that if I threw that in a skill check, for that skill check it would be a negative. So this would be a -1 if you were counting it, and then if I pulled this one 2, so I haven't shuffled these, so these are all the same pretty much, all in a row. So I'd be a -2, but if I drew some greens, that would be positive, and they would counteract it. Also, in addition to activating locations, you can use what's printed on these cards as an action. So as you can see, it says action. Repair your current location. If the Battlestar Galactica is damaged, you can repair it if you can draw engineering cards. Or you can repair 2 damaged Vipers. Typically, you start off the game with 10 Vipers, I believe. 6 are in reserves and 4 are in damaged. And you can repair them, and it's pretty good to repair. It's pretty good first action to do. Though, losing too many Vipers, I've rarely seen that happen. It can happen, but it's pretty rare. Anyway, that's a skill check. This location, Research Lab, action, draw 1 engineering or tactics card. Nobody really uses all that often, but it's there. Hangar deck, allow yourself to be launched in a Viper. That's pretty worthwhile. You never really want this location to be damaged. And the Armory, which allows you to attack any Centurions that may be on the boarding party track. The other 2 locations, the bad locations, are sickbay. The way sickbay works is if you're on a ship and it's damaged, or if you're on a location and it's damaged, pretty much any action you would think you would die from in any other circumstance just automatically sends you to sickbay, unless the circumstance says that you are executed. Executed is actual death. If you die and you are a human, you lose a morale point, because gosh darn, we lost another human. We can't afford human lives. If you are a Cylon, then you move on to the Cylon locations, which I may as well get into right now. These Cylon locations are locations that allow you to still be able to, you're still in the game, you can still inflict some damage. You would start off in the resurrection ship, and you can well, these actually, you know, I'm not familiar with the vanilla version of Battlestar Galactica, even though I played it a few times. But yeah, these locations are actually different in Pegasus, I believe. Pegasus or Exodus. Yeah, it's a whole new card you put on top of this, and it has different wording. But anyway, Resurrection Ship is where you start off at. The human fleet in layer expansions allows you to infiltrate. You can re-infiltrate Galactica if you want, but people know you are a Cylon, and they probably will try to stop you. Being on the Galactica as a Cylon player gives slight benefits. You're able to contribute 2 cards instead of 1 to any skill check, so it allows you to sabotage. You can have greater effect on a skill check, and it also lets you get 1 extra card to draw. And so normally you'd get 1 card, you can get 2. So it helps you do more damage in skill checks, but it leaves you vulnerable to attack. Because if you're killed, then you're put back in Resurrection Ship and big whoop-de-doo. Cylon Fleet, you're allowed to activate Cylon ships, much like how the Galactica can activate Raiders. You can activate these Cylon ships and make them move around and do bad stuff. And Caprica basically lets you play a crisis card, which whittles down the resources here, or creates very, very nasty things. And let's see, Sickbay, I already explained that. And the Brig basically, again, Brig like the Admiral's quarters and also administration. And in layer expansion, there's a Pegasus expansion has an airlock, which also has a skill check like this. In the Brig, you're basically stuck there unless you do the skill check on this location to get out. And you need a strength. You need a skill check. You need a. It's a whole strength of 7. You need a politics and tactics cards to pass it. And yeah, you definitely do not want to be in the Brig. Some characters make it easier to get out of the Brig. Some characters are harder to get out, or get into the Brig, or harder to get out. I don't know. I just confused myself like that, but. Yeah, the Brig, being in there, you still get your full allotment of cards, unlike Sickbay. If you're in Sickbay and your turn starts and you're in Sickbay, you only get 1 card. So you can choose either 1 tactics, or if you were Saltai, you would be able to only choose 1 tactics or 1 leadership card. If you were, let's say, Tom Zarek here, you're only allowed 1 politics or 1 leadership or 1 tactics card. If you're in the Brig, you still get your full allotment of cards. However, you're only allowed to play 1 card in a skill check, and that's pretty deadly. That means you're effectively neutered in the game. There's really nothing you can do. As for the other locations, this is Colonial 1. Like I said, this is the President's personal ship. Activating this room lets you draw 2 politics cards. That is the yellow cards. President's Office lets you draw and play quorum cards. These are quorum cards. These are special cards if you are president. Oh, by the way, each character, there's a line of succession, much like in the show, where certain people have it's like a rank and file kind of thing, where the president, there's a line of succession. So if any one of these players are in the game, the highest one up is president for that game. So if somebody picks, let's say, Tom Zarek, and another person picks Gaius Baltar is president. And you see Leah Adama, William Adama. Basically, political leaders are usually first up there. And for admirals, it's military leaders. And then pilots, as you can see, and then support, Galen Turo, and then politics. It's a particular order to the whole thing. Some characters' strengths are that they're so high up in the tree, like Will Adama and Laura Roslin. They automatically, you're guaranteed to start off as president or admiral. Laura Roslin will always be president, but however, in the Pegasus expansion, Admiral Kane is introduced, and she actually is a higher rank than Adama. So if Admiral Kane is in the game, then she becomes admiral. She's instantly admiral, and nobody will really challenge her. And Speaking of that, those are the titles. This is the Admiral card and the President card. You're handed this if your character meets the requirements, if it's the higher rank up. The Admiral is pretty straightforward. He doesn't get anything all that fancy. He's allowed to throw nukes. You start off with 2 nukes. I think you can get a third if somebody plays a build nuke card, which is a special blue card, which isn't in the vanilla, but it's in, I believe it's in Pegasus. And the Admiral also gets to choose where to jump, and these are the jump cards. This is the destination deck, as they call it. This is Kobold. This is basically for reference. The Admiral, every time you make it to the end of the jump track here, or if you activate FTL, the Admiral gets to jump. Now the Admiral only the Admiral are allowed to see the top 2 first cards, and that's a bad choice. This isn't. Like I said, the deck isn't shuffled. So here's what the Admiral would see. Okay, well, let's see here. And the numbers down here indicate how far you go. And like I said earlier, the farther you go, the fastest is generally better for the humans. So let's say here, Desolate Moon, you lose 3 fuel, which is a hard resource. Like I said, the hard resource to get is fuel. You lose 3 fuel, however, you jump 3. That's pretty good. Humans like that. This is a 1 jump. As you can see, it's a 1 jump. You didn't get very far. That's really bad. Humans will immediately accuse you of stalling if you pick a 1 jump, because they're like, well, you're stalling. You're not going anywhere. However, the flavor text on this card says, lose 1 fuel. The Admiral may miss one raptor to roll a die 3 or higher. Gain 2 fuel. Otherwise, destroy 1 raptor. So if you're in a tight bind on fuel, you might actually have to pick this card. And then, you know, you might actually be human. People might accuse you of being a Cylon because you're just wasting your time. You're trying to take your time going throughout the galaxy when, hey, we could be in Cobalt already. What the hell are you doing? You know. By the way, I'll show you the Raptor cards. I mean the Raptor ship. There's 4 of these. These are just markers. They don't actually go on the board because they aren't combat ships. There's really no benefit to them. In this show, they're kind of like, they're used as personnel transports and radars, mobile radars and everything. And you start off with 4, and if they're all destroyed, then you wouldn't be able to do that skill check. You wouldn't be able to do the text on that card. There are special tactics cards called Launch Scouts, which if you pass the roll die, you're able to look at the top card of the Destiny or Destination deck. And let's see, you see this one, you say, oh wow, you know, this is the one you saw on top, so this is the one you want to put on top. If you see a 1, you might want to shuffle it down to the bottom. Again, only you may look at these cards, so people are going to look at you funny, like, what is he doing? Is he putting a 1 card on top? Well, we have to find out, you know. Basically, everything you do in this game is almost secret.